Welcome back, everybody, to the Keep It Real podcast. We have another wonderful day, another wonderful podcast scheduled for you today. Cindy.
Even with our technical difficulties, Cindy?
She's here. And Amanda and
Shannon Blosser.
Hi.
He's going to be our guest today. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a pastor. My name's Shannon Blosser. I'm a pastor at Peerage United Methodist in Huntington. I'm a native of West Virginia. Came back in 2019. So right before the start of the pandemic. So it's been fun to be back in West Virginia because most of my ministry back home has been all pandemic related. So it's been interesting. So, wife, 2 kids, and a cat, and no hair. So we try to make it real.
Hey, that's good because
that's what we're all about here.
being real.
Being real.
We're having some technical difficulties today, so we hope you all can hear us all right. We're going to be talking a little bit about autism inclusion today. Shannon, to start being a father of autistic children, I said, what are some of the stereotypes that you'd say you're forced to deal with?
Oh gosh. So to really get started, my son is nonverbal. That doesn't mean he doesn't communicate. So that's one of the first stereotypes that we deal with is that, my son doesn't communicate like this. So you and I, all four of us can have conversations where we can go back and forth with each other. And so for someone that is nonverbal, if I ask a question of, for instance, how is your day? That back and forth doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean he doesn't communicate. He has language. He has his own abilities to speak. He has his own ways of communicating. And so one of the ways that he communicates is through television shows.
Aww.
And so we know by what television show he's quoting, what his emotion is dealing with that time, and then even what song. So we tell people we have to listen to the code to understand what he's saying. So that's one, to assume that someone is nonverbal can't speak. The other is that everyone is either really intelligent, smart, can do the math on the top of their head and all this. Rain Man was based off of someone that was from West Virginia. They used a character from West Virginia, a guy from West Virginia. The founder of the Autism Services Center, her son was Dustin Hoffman's muse for that.
Wow.
But we assume that what we see is what it is. And so the mantra is, if you've seen one person with autism, you have met one person. The spectrum is so wide and varied that just because you've met one person doesn't mean that you've met them all. But so that's another one. There's others like that they, can't do anything. No. That they can't handle public spaces. No, they can. You just need to accommodate. My wife and I, we talk that we go through stereotypes almost on a daily, ritualistic basis, between ableism and stereotypes. So we see it all. So, yeah.
And I know we think that a lot of times we're being autism inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
We have a group that comes here to the church on Sundays now.
Good.
They're a group of 5, and they're adults.
Mm-hmm. Which is one of the most ignored populations within the autism movement.
I know that.
Most of the focus comes with kids. And a lot of times it is parents, typically middle-class parents, who are so overwhelmed that they put all their focus in on 18 and under. And then the system, after you turn 18, 21, there's not a lot there for you. All of our focus is 21 and under because you can go to public school for 3 years after 18 because of the IDA laws. But after you turn 21, there's not much there for you. There's not as many therapies. There's not as many resources. So the adult autism community gets very ignored. And there's not a lot for people. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt on that, but that's an important community that gets overlooked, both in the intellectual conversation and even in the church inclusion conversation, which I'm a part of. So.
That was something else I was going to ask. We have, there's 5 adults that come,
Mm-hmm.
and we also have a couple of children that are under the age. I think she is 10 now.
Yeah.
little girl? I don't want to say names, but what are some ways that we can become more inclusive and make things better?
Yeah.
You know.
So I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning. So the reason why they're talking to me about autism is that I have a ministry within my church called the Autism Inclusion Mission. And so what we do with that, or what I do with that, is I try to coach churches, small churches in particular, on how to be more inclusive. And so one of the things that I always tell people is try. That's the first thing, is try. One of the things that we often encounter are churches that get so overwhelmed that they just say, we can't do this. And that's the first mistake. With being willing to try and learn as you go. You're not going to have it all figured out on day one, but try. And so the first step into inclusion is talking to the families, talking to the caregivers, talking to if they're able to have communication, or if they have an ASC device, like, basically an iPad or something like that, where they can communicate with. Ask them what they need. What would help you to engage worship with us? How can we help you to come into this space? And some it may be just let me be me. Let me worship in the way that I feel comfortable. So you may see a child that, they may need to run around. God bless them. You might need some that need headphones. My son has to wear headphones from the second he leaves our van to the time he's in the church to the time he leaves, and he never takes them off. That's fine. That just is how he can engage. So having those conversations and then being willing to learn from that, but never assume you can't do anything. Every church can do something. And it all starts with that first question of, how can we help you? That, identifying yourself with that person, understanding that music and noise and sensory, things that they may come to you and say, this is really overwhelming, that you may think is no big deal. Put yourself in their shoes. Someone that has sensory processing disorder and autism, the sensory processing, it's not the official diagnosis, it's part of the whole family. Think about all the noise that is on a Sunday morning. People talking, the gathering of people around, the praise band or the organ or the music, the air conditioning running, or even just the hum of a room. All of that can be sensory. So understanding what someone walks into is important. Understanding their specs, understanding what they need. Have some sensory items, have some weighted blankets, have some weighted vests, have some fidget toys. We have one of the things that we do at our church is we have a sensory basket for kids. We don't judge. If you need it, go for it. You can get those. You can get those for like $20 at Walmart, Amazon. A little like one of those like little slinky toys that make noise. Like. Sorry, I'm bad on sound effects. But it's one of those like little sensory, like little slinky toys things, or fidget spinners and poppets. They become so popular today because we just give kids something to distract them sometimes. But for sensory kids that need that extra sensory, it's a way for them to help focus. And so reminding people that someone that's playing with a poppet or a fidget spinner, you might think they're being distracting. You might get some of the old crankies going, I don't believe they should be having that in church. That might be what's helping them to engage worship. And so one of the things for us as pastors and as church people, we should never be putting in roadblocks to keep people from the table. And so those trinkets, $5-10, or you can get stuffed animals that are weighted. Think about that. Or sunglasses. Having sunglasses for folks that have light sensitivities. It's the same thing we do for some of our older congregations when we increase the bulletin size to 14 so people can read it, or having the hearing listening devices for the person like me that doesn't have good hearing on one ear. It's the same thing. So, but oftentimes for people with disabilities, we shun them and we put them off to the side and we don't even try. And that's not what Christ calls us to do.
That's right. That's what we talk about all the time. What can we do? What can we do? Because I know the one group that comes we never thought anything about it, but we were having hot dogs for lunch downstairs. And they left because they couldn't have hot dogs because it was a choking hazard. And I was like, that broke my heart.
And,
I didn't know.
that's another thing. Like I've written about it, like on my blog of church potlucks. We all love church potlucks, but sometimes a child with food sensitivity or an adult with food sensitivities, you think about the typical church potluck, a fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and green bean casserole and all that. Well, we all assume everyone can eat just what's provided.
Yeah.
But I know for us, in my family, anytime that we have a potluck, we're bringing our own lunch because there's nothing there for him at the table. So we pack his own lunch. What would it mean for a church if you're going to have a potluck to just take that one extra phone call, to call that group or to call that family and say, hey, we're having this potluck on Sunday. We're excited about, but we want to make sure that you're included. What is one meal that your son, your daughter, the adult that you're caring for, what's that one food that they love? And if there's a way that they need it made, can you help me with that recipe? Because I can tell you, like with my son, he knows the difference between my spaghetti and my wife's spaghetti. And my spaghetti's the best and my wife's spaghetti's not. And so he will only eat it if I cook it. He won't eat it if my wife cooks it. And so it's just, we do the same recipe, but there's a little something that he can tell between the two of us.
Aww.
And so, but understanding that. So maybe it's just, they like French fries, all right? There's a McDonald's on every corner. What if someone just went out 5 minutes before the potluck and ran to Fifth Avenue and picked up, and ordered a basket of French fries and brought them back and put a sign on it just for Bob or whomever? Doing the little things can help make room for the bigger conversations. Those bigger conversations are, how can we help you when you go to the school and you fight the lack of inclusion in the school, or when you have to fight that there's not any adult daycares or adult resource centers, or there barely any, or how can we walk alongside you? But you're not going to get permission to walk alongside somebody until you do the little things right first. So you got to do those little things. That will get you space into the big one. And it's important to do those little things because, statistics will tell us 1 in 3 families of a special needs child have left a church simply because they have felt unwelcome. 1 in 3. 84% of the autism community does not go to, let me restate it. Someone with autism is 84% more likely not to come to church than any other population. And so that's from a research from Clemson University. So that tells you this is an important conversation to have because you're going to run into somebody. 1 in 43 boys. And it's not, we don't have good statistics for girls because we unfortunately we're biased in our research, in our testing. Young girls get, it'll be fine. Well, we need to test. Same with the African American community and minority community. We don't do as well testing for them. And so you're going to run into something. And the church needs to be more welcoming. And that's what we try to advocate, is being more welcoming. And welcoming doesn't mean just, we have this little party over here. It means bringing them and having them as an equal place at the table and making the table adaptable and accessible for everyone so that they can come and taste and see that it is good.
So, like, don't just put them in a choir.
Yeah, you need to have,
have a choir room, like nursery in the back. But
sensory rooms are great, and I advocate for them. But sensory rooms need to be used as a way to help them to come in, and if they need that space to go out, that's there. But one of the things I encourage with the sensory room is having access to worship in that room. If you're able to do like a closed circuit, TV or Facebook feed or something in that room, have that. Or have it to where you can have a window back into the sanctuary. But don't just do it as, if you come to church, this is where we put you. Because that's how you segregate off a community. If you're going to have a sensory room, it needs to be a place for someone to go to when they need that 15, 20 minutes to just chill, but they still have access in for worship. So have it. They are important. the tents, the swings, the other things that you can do in those rooms, the blankets and all of that, they're important and they're vital. But make sure that you do it not in a way that segregates them out to say, sorry, if you're autistic, you need to go to this room. You can't be a part of the sanctuary. But it's a place where if we have a sensory tent in our church, it's a place for Noah to go to when he's overwhelmed and needs a timeout. But then he can still, where our sensory tent is, he can still be engaged in the children's church activities. He can still be engaged in those conversations. He just gets a chance to zone out for 5-10 minutes or the whole time if he needs to. But he's still in the room. He's still in the room. So that's the one thing I would encourage with sensory rooms is that they are in that larger conversation space. And think about how do we include elements of worship so that they can still be engaged in it. I often use the example, nursing rooms and baby rooms were really popular when I was in high school, junior high and high school, trying to be more inclusive and welcoming. So they took a room that had access to our sanctuary when they built the new room back where I grew up, Perry Memorial Building back outside of Beckley and Shadesburg. And so there's a room that was a Sunday school classroom for Sunday school, but then they have a window and blinds to where if a mother or someone needed to go in just rock a baby for a few minutes, you could go in there, you could rock, but you could still be a part of worship.
That's how our room is in the back.
Yeah, and so that's a good place to have a sensory room. So thinking about this in conversation, how can we include and not exclude? And so it's all about, that's all basic hospitality. One of my favorite professors, Christine Pohl, God rest her soul, she just died last month, always was talking about hospitality is about welcoming the other, welcoming the person that's a stranger, that's excluded. And there's no community, and I know I'm an autism advocate, and I know what I advocate for in the church. There's no community in the church today that is more excluded than those with disabilities, both physical and invisible. We as a church, and pastors and leaders, need to do a better job recognizing where we have fallen short, and then making the bridge and making the room over to build adaptable, accessible tables that encourage everyone to come. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so thankful for just the included knowledge. I can't word right now. Sorry.
We had a long discussion about how to get online before we started, so we're all flabbergasted.
I'm very thankful for the knowledge because there are a lot of things that just make perfect sense, absolute perfect sense, on so many levels. And it's just like, before I got here, I ran a little behind. I was trying to make sure our house was tidy. We had, my husband was having a couple of his friends over, and I'm running late, but at the same time, it's like trying to make it as accommodating as possible. But it's simple, but at the same time, it takes work.
Yeah.
It takes work, and it's so easy to just brush over somebody and just say, well, they may not be back, so I'm not going to put the effort in. That is such a wrong way of thinking about anything, because, and it's not just in a church community, it's in any community.
And especially within the disability community, the autism community, we're taught so much that we have to accommodate, that we have to adapt to meet you. And so we're often told, or often made to feel that when we go into spaces that we're the ones that have to adapt so that everyone else is comfortable. I tell people, I see the wolves. And what I mean by that is, I can tell when someone is looking at my son and going, I have empathy and sympathy for them. I'm sure that they're dealing with something. And I can tell the look of, get this child away from me. And we see it all. And so, accommodate, it should be the other way around. And what I mean by that is, it should be up to those who are marginalized to adapt to those who are already privileged and welcomed. It should be those who are privileged and welcome humbling themselves
Yes.
to accommodate to the other.
I agree.
Regardless of the conversation, whether it's autism, disability, any group, those with privilege and power need to be the ones who humble themselves to welcome the marginalized.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, it's not just in a church community. It's not just in functions or in Walmart. It's anywhere. And it's
I laugh because I've had a bad experience at Walmart sometimes. Not here, somewhere else.
Walmart. It's just a bad experience. I am not a fan. And it's nothing against Walmart. I have,
I just go to Target because it's closer, so I thought
we're Family Dollar folks. And
yeah, I get you.
but I mean, there's a point, there's a point look where I've always tried to put myself in somebody else's shoes, and for a child or an adult to say it's too peoply out there, or to be have that kind of a sense of freedom, I get it. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not on that deep of a level, perhaps, but it's something I always try to understand. One of when I was 18, one of my first jobs there was in the community that I grew up in is in Weston, West Virginia. There's a place that was called it was the United Behavioral Center, or UBC, or United Summit Center is what it turned into, and it was an organization that managed to work with disabilities through the government as well, on that level to manage, take care of either in home for some adults or for the younger ones that had a group area that they could play and learn and all this and everything. And it was such a humbling experience to begin with because I was ignorant going into it, especially at 18, and I didn't know hardly anything coming out of it. I had the most amazing people that I got to spend time with and just hang out with and just be their friend.
Yeah.
And it's the personality between, and you said each and every single person is different, just as we all are. And the very personalities will never not be something I always hold dear in my heart. And I miss the people that I got to work with and be friends with. So
you hit on something important there. And sometimes within the disability community, until we've encountered it, we can build that wall around ourselves where we don't realize what's going on. And so for a lot of folks, and I put myself in there, I even though I have other members of my family who are on the autism spectrum, until my son was diagnosed, it's a different journey. And so until you've walked into someone else's shoes, you don't really know what someone else is dealing with. So that gives you a different perspective.
absolutely. It's, like I said, it is an extremely humbling experience, but it was for me at the time, and that was one of my first moments in life where I'm like, I never like to be treated different based on anything about my outward appearance. You know what I mean? Get to know me for me, and a lot of times we preach that, but that was truly a moment in my life where I was like, okay, so I'm learning from you. You're just all about you, just based on, my time spent. But it's like at the same time, they understood me, they knew me and got to know my personality, and the least judgmental community I have ever came across in my life. It was fantastic.
That's one of the great things about the community is that they are some of the most loving people I've ever met in my life. And not just my son. One of the things I love doing is going to when I pick him up at the autism center, for therapy days. Some of the kids, they're just some of the most joyous people you've ever been around. And I wish people would see that and not see the behaviors or see the struggle or put a wall up. If we could just see the person that God created. And stop with the whole, ooh, this is bad, or ooh, this was created by Mexico. No, it wasn't bad. No. But if we just see the person, it would change our life.
Right. That was, always been saying, I started in healthcare probably about 13 years ago, and that was one thing that told me, what's normal? Give me a definition. Give me a definition. What's normal?
Yeah.
My church has gotten tired of me saying that there's no such thing as normal.
There is no such thing as normal. My normal, everything down on a molecular level, my normal is not your normal.
Exactly.
Maybe close. There may be a reference range to what's considered to be an acceptable, we'll say, blood sugar level. We'll just go on that.
Yeah, let's not talk about my health.
That'll be on the next show. Even in healthcare on a molecular level, there is no such thing as normal. Why would anybody go out into any community and say, well, you're not normal? I'm not.
But you think about that conversation from a historical perspective. Our desire for normal comes out of the eugenics movement in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where we thought if we can just birth the right babies with the right people, all of our poverty, all of our disabilities would go away. That idea is still prevalent in our desire for normal, and yet it is also prevalent in how we treat families with disabilities. And so I tell people, the way we treat it, all this stuff comes back to haunt us, these bad theologies, these bad theories that we put out there to basically shame and distance ourselves from each other.
Based off of the 1800s
Let's not go back to the Civil War period.
Yeah, let's not. Let's not repeat history and create a new one in a sense of, it's not just picking out certain flaws of the history, but rewriting that history and saying, no, that's not a really good way to think about anything, so let's start a new trend. But I have, and it's on my Facebook because I had to pull it up, but one of my favorite quotes is, normality is a paved road. It's comfortable to walk, but no flowers grow.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
That's true.
And that's by Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah.
And there's some arguments that he had disabilities.
Absolutely.
With mental health and stuff.
Absolutely. So. Check out the history of Vincent van Gogh. It's really interesting. I've actually looked it up. I'm not gonna lie. It's very interesting. He had a very...
But some of our greatest, Abraham Lincoln just had disabilities with depression. Yeah. And so just, that's the other side of it. Just because you have a disability, though, I'm not one of those that says you have to. There's a movement now with some to say, well, we can't say disability. No, you can, but you can also help people thrive within it. You can help people thrive. Disability is not a bad word. It just expresses something. It's not a bad word. What is a bad word is when we try to shame people for it.
Right.
But you can thrive and live a full life, even within that. And that's where you get into ableism of thinking that someone with a disability can't. No, they can. You just have watch them.
Yeah.
Watch them. They'll do more than what you can think. I have my own disability of anxiety. I can do more than what some other people may think. Just because I, can function with it. We won't talk about how much I hide in my office afterwards. But
you're in the right mood. I have been diagnosed, which I've known since I was 16 years old, with anxiety, and recently with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, God helps me walk through it and helps me cope with it, and we live our everyday lives. But there are those days that it just gets all of you. Just because you're a pastor doesn't mean that.
Well, and sometimes it's more than that.
Yeah.
I didn't have nearly the anxiety I had as a sports writer or a news writer, though I was dealing with just as much bad stuff when I was a journalist. But there's something about the job and the pressures of the job that a lot of people don't realize that makes it so compounded for those of us who are predisposed to anxiety or PTSD or depression, which means you got to find things that make you happy, whether it's pro wrestling or whether it's life or whether it's something else. You got to find those things that give you joy.
Absolutely. That's one of those things is I find joy in my own ADD. I've got anxiety, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
But my license plate says squirrel, so that's That's me. Why? Because a squirrel. And it's like, my coworkers even know I've got a sign up on my door. This is don't poke the squirrel.
Yeah. Yeah, we chase a lot of rabbit trails, in office meetings, so I get it.
We do that here, and I think that's one thing we did a podcast on de-stressing,
Mm-hmm.
and we did that. One of the ways that we do is when we do this, we're just ourselves.
Yeah.
And we might jump from this to this to this to this.
As we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always. But, it helps us. It's an
Mhm.
outlet, and it's
We
stuff that
don't
we
need
enjoy.
Yeah, we don't need that one. So.
Absolutely. I do want to ask for those that are that would like to be educated more on autism and different things they can do. What would you suggest as the best educational material or tool to help somebody?
So from a church perspective, there's a couple resources I would recommend. One, you can always follow my personal page of Autism Inclusion Mission on Facebook. I got to put the plug in there.
Description in the link below.
That again,
Autism Inclusion Mission, AIM. You can find this on Facebook. Good book to read is Disability in the Church. The author of the book is a colleague of mine, Lamar Hardwick. Great guy. He was diagnosed with autism later in life in his 30s, and he's become one of the most prominent activists in the church for autism inclusion. So I'd recommend reading that book. I'd also recommend another book called Same Lake, Different Boat, which talks about how the church can be more welcoming of everyone with disabilities. And that's written from I'm going to mispronounce her name, God bless me, but Stephanie Hubach. I'm bad on name pronunciations. I'm also bad on names, but that's another story for another day. But Stephanie writes from the perspective of someone who is the parent of a child with disabilities in her experience, and she's become a prominent advocate. There's some other resources. Key Ministry is a great website for churches. I do some. I've taught for them the last 2 years. Key Ministry is a good place. The ARC and also the Autism Society of America are great places. I discourage people from going to Autism Speaks. And the reason why I discourage people from going to Autism Speaks is the way that they treat autism is that they treat it as a disease and not as a part of someone. And so they're always advocating for, look for the cure. Look for the cure. And so I look for organizations that are trying to treat people as humans. And so Autism Society of America is a great place. The ARC is a great place. Those will give you some great tools. The West Virginia Autism Training Center here at Marshall University is a great resource. One of the great things about our community with Marshall is they have one of the top 10 programs for autism students in the nation.
Wow.
The nation.
Awesome. Yay, Marshall.
And I'm saying that as a WVU alum. So, but one of the top 10 programs in the nation for students who go to school with autism. They do a great job of helping you. And I know friends from Virginia who have come to Marshall just for that program.
Wow.
So that's a good one. WVU Center for the Excellence in Disabilities, that's another great one here in West Virginia. So those are some great resources where you can tap into and take what they give and say, how can this help me in the church? And so never be afraid to learn from someone else and then say, how can I adapt what I'm learning from the CED, the Center for Excellence in Disabilities, or the Training Center? What can I take from what they're saying? And then how can I adapt it? And so those are some great places to go to and some great resources to look out there. And that'll be great help.
Definitely. Check it out, folks. If you're interested in learning more, definitely we'll have the links to those resources down in the description below.
Also, and
Yes.
also, I know we talked about you maybe coming to talk to us.
Yeah.
So what people can get hold of you if they would like for you to come to their church?
Yeah, you can reach out. You can message me on the Autism Inclusion Missions website, Facebook page. I'm on it way too much. So you can always find, that's the best way to schedule me to come in. They're free because I see this as part of my ministry. So as long as you feed me, I'm good.
We all speak. That's a good thing.
Definitely.
Destiny, since you've been invisible, do you have anything to say?
She's still here, folks, I promise. She's been here the whole time.
She's keeping track of how many dad jokes I've made.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of good dad jokes.
Do
Oh,
you have a good one?
Probably, but they're usually off the cuff.
yeah. But
Do you have anything to say? No? Nothing at all? Speaking of, yeah, I told him that you're a wrestler. There goes the squirrel.
yep.
Destiny is starting her training.
Wow, nice.
Have to get her to stick her face or name in here somewhere. She likes to hide a lot.
There you go.
So,
So who's your favorite wrestler? Just gotta ask, just for continuity's
All
sake.
time or now?
All time.
Oh gosh, all time. Oh, I would have to say it's hard to pick. I would have to say either Flair, Michaels, Austin, or Triple H. That would be my top four.
Very good. They're
Yeah.
very, very good top four. No, Dusty, not even one final. Dusty.
I will say I want to do a sermon series just on the epic promo of the hardworking man. I want to figure out how to do a sermon series where I can play that. Like
It's American Dream, baby.
I have had my church, bless their heart. They don't know what to do with me sometimes because they've had to deal with me coming up with my phrases. So they know that whenever I say this is like WrestleMania, they know that things have gotten too chaotic. But I did a sermon.
I'm getting pointed at.
I did a sermon about, 6 months to a year ago, and it was the sermon graphic that I came up with was Kevin Owens in the middle of the ring, just looking defeated, and it was his I Quit promo.
Yeah.
And I used that for a sermon about feeling like you're just ready to give up. And I could just see my church when they saw the sermon video come up, the image up on the PowerPoint. You can just see their looks going, "Who's that?" but they, I will say, God bless them. They look at me and they realize that we don't get it, and my wife doesn't get it. But the other day, my lead team chair, so my church, my lead team's my main administrative board. My chair looked at me and she's like, "You've had a rough day. You need to just go home and watch wrestling." I'm like, "Yes, I do."
That's a great idea.
So I took a photo of me watching wrestling and sent it to her.
It's funny because the message yesterday was about getting put in a submission hold, feeling like you're less than a chokehold. And we used Roman Reigns in the bloodline as an example.
And then our lay leader.
Yeah, Mike gets up. Can you smell what God is cooking?
Listen, our church, everybody
We
out
have
there,
fun.
y'all know we have fun. Well, y'all know we need it, and y'all know we have fun too.
I was thinking about this when it was coming in, like all the wrestlers. I've gone to Raw a couple times, and the wrestlers that you see that you think are never going to be that good, or that you think, "Oh, I just saw this one," or the matches you may see that end up being like the memorable ones, like Ric Flair in the ladder match. I'm in the arena in Raleigh going, "They just killed Flair," or Michaels and Angle. But then you see the others like Schnitzky, and you go, "Why does he on the card?" But
Because he's related to somebody. The nepotism in wrestling, listen.
Of course, one time I went and he was on a dark card, and everyone erupted because he was on the dark card, and he was not on the main show. And the crowd just cheered because they're like, "Thank God he's not on the main show."
My
Yeah,
goodness.
gosh.
So many good ones, though. Oh,
But Dusty was good.
thank you. I will not be defeated.
No, he's in my
Ric
next.
Flair's great.
Great as a wrestler, not so much as a human.
He's come a long way though. Recently.
He's coming around.
Dusty, on the other hand, Dusty was amazing. He for me though, he made me believe because he was so relatable. Ric Flair, I can't relate to
No.
Ric Flair.
No, I do think
I
that.
can't.
But I will say that I remember the Spike incident thinking that was real. When the spike in the eye that got him fired, I really thought that was real. Yeah.
So, do we have any final words? Any final comments? Thoughts?
Destiny?
I might get hurt now for saying that that I have Rhodes in my second tier.
Hey, that was amazing. You're on fire. I'm thrilled to say Collins or Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels and Seth Rollins.
Yes.
Now, so
It's okay. All can be forgiven. No. But I do want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the incredible information. Not only the information, but just that it's an eye-opening thing.
Yeah.
As simple as certain things can be, just inclusion and just be kind.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's always one of those things that I've stood behind is just be kind. But let's be a bit more inclusive and understanding of everyone, and it's not just myself, but taking the time out of our day, of our busy schedules and busy lives to stop and ask somebody, especially if they have special needs or any kind of disability, what can we do? What can we do to help?
Yeah.
Because I know there are times also that I've got my brother and sister-in-law sometimes are like, just take this kid. And he's good, he's just, I need a minute. And that's just your everyday average 7-year-old.
yeah.
Just give them a minute, the parents especially, a lot of times I know don't get that. With special needs or disabilities, they don't get a moment, So being able to have a special friendship or relationship with somebody that does have disabilities, you're, not just being an awesome human being to begin with, but that parent or caregiver or somebody else may want a moment to take a breath for a second, or whatnot. But it's just incredible information. Again, I thank you. And again,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yes.
You have to come back again and we'll do a whole wrestling.
Yay.
Yes. We
That's
got
good.
trivia too.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yes.
No, I'm just thinking like there's a quiz website I go to. Sometimes it's the quiz I go to. It's like, can you name every WCW US champion? Just about half of them.
When the list is 500 long,
I know,
it's really hard.
You get happy if you get half.
But again, we do want to thank you very much. Folks at home, information in the links below. Check them out. Nothing can hurt getting more knowledge and being awesome and being kind. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
It has been real. It has been fun. It's been real fun. We got Cindy, Shannon, myself, and Destiny's still over here, y'all. I promise. She's still here. But it's been great, and we want to thank you so much. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We hope you all have a wonderful day. God bless. Bye.